The alternative is if I said to my kids, let's go to Target and buy Christmas decorations, we'd come home with like dog poop with googly eyes on it. We'd come home with that big mouth Billy Bass white elephant gift singing fish plaque thing. Do you remember that from like 15 years ago, 20 years? I don't know, a long time ago. It's really sad when you start to get old and like the decades start blending together. You don't want to come home with, or at least I don't, some kind of a bobblehead doll, right? That is in a Santa suit, but it's not Santa. It's really like a llama, and the llama is singing Marshmallow World. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. A Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges, spirituality, ADHD, or maybe just family, travel, and logistics. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison, with your mystery meat sandwich.
Well, greetings, compadres. For your mystery meat sandwich today, a quote by Wayne Dyer. If you don't love yourself, nobody will. Not only that, you won't be good at loving anybody else. Loving starts with self. Okay, so I feel like self-care and self-love have become somewhat synonymous and also a little bit of a trending concept lately in the past few years. And then you start seeing all this stuff like self-care is more than a bath or a spa day. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. However, I think self-care can also be a bath and a spa day. I'm just saying. Point is, until I developed a love for myself, I really was a tornado rolling through everybody's lives. So my problem was and is if I don't spend enough time recharging my batteries, then for me, forget about it. I don't have anything else left. I'm like that juice box, totally sucked dry, the Capri Sun, with the living daylight squeezed out of it. And so as the holidays are approaching, or the December holidays, this is a concept that I think a lot about, primarily because last year it didn't go so well. On Christmas Eve when I was still wrapping gifts and I was full of resentment, I was angry and just felt like nobody was doing anything but me. And I've learned that self-care and self-love, is things like preparing, is things like asking for help. It just looks different these days than it used to look for me. And it might look different for you too. But this whole episode is going to be about how to prepare to love ourselves well during these stressful times. And I mean, I say stressful, and it sounds a little bit cheesy. It sounds a little bit, first world problem, which yes, I completely concur. So in case I forget to say that later in the episode, I just want to get it out there right now that I have wonderful problems today in the rooms, the 12-step rooms. We call these Cadillac problems, which I think is kind of an old school term. Maybe today it would be more like Rolls-Royce problems, Bentley problems. In other words, what it's trying to say is I have really classy problems today than I used to have. When I was drinking, my biggest problem every day was staying sober. Would I be able to actually make it through, quote, one day at a time, unquote, sober? And in addition, I had legal problems. I had all of that. And so that unmanageability is why what we say now today is we have super classy problems. And that's definitely true for me. So as we jump into the chaplain's chat, love them or hate them, the holidays are here. And I find myself, as I mentioned, last year was a little nuts, and I saw a side of myself that I don't like seeing. And, I'm an Enneagram 7. And so what that means is I love spontaneity. I am all about high amounts of fun, low amounts of pain, freedom of choice. Getting bored is not my thing. I just want to make everything fun and exciting. And so I'm kind of a little bit Clark Griswoldish around Christmas time. That's just how it goes. And if I don't feel like that is being accomplished, I get a little bit grumpy, I get overwhelmed, and then I'm just mad. So what I need to do during those times is to remember that I need to care for myself. And so these are going to be 7 tips for surviving the holidays sober. Now, for me, thankfully, at this point in my sobriety, I don't think of drinking as a solution to my problems. That thought is not something that occurs to me. In fact, if I think about drinking as a way to deal with my problems, it actually seems like that would be a horrible choice. Because if I have a problem or a feeling and I drink over it, then I actually have 2 problems. I have the original problem, and now I'm drinking over it, which doesn't work. And so I'm not actually in the solution of something that is a good idea that makes progress in walking through the feeling and getting to the other side of it. So thankfully, I don't deal with that anymore. And really what it is for me is escapism at this point. What kind of junk TV can I watch? What kind of crappy food can I eat? What can I graze through Amazon looking for that I really don't need? And so I have different ways of escaping today, but I recognize that that's what I'm doing. So I would prefer to not deal with those things. But that's part of being human. It is part of being human. And the human experience is having feelings and emotions and wanting to escape and feeling the depth and the breadth of so many things that happen to us, joys and sorrows. And I'm here to tell you that I didn't feel a lot when I was drinking. I couldn't feel happiness. I didn't really feel pain. And all I knew was when I would start to get restless, irritable, and discontent. That meant that I was going to be looking for another drink pretty soon, because that was my normal state sober at that point in time. Any lucid moments, I was restless, irritable, and discontent, and I had no inner peace. And so today, because I cultivate different things, I have a totally different life. It doesn't even feel like I'm the same person. And I guess that's because I'm not the same person. I've had a spiritual awakening as a result of doing the 12 steps, and it has made all the difference in my life. So, top 7 tips for surviving the holidays sober. So sober in your body, sober in your mind, sober in your thinking. This is what I'm after. Number 1. Prepare and provide ... for yourself. Okay? Prepare and provide for yourself. So, have you ever gone on a trip? Maybe, for me, these are always the international trips. I'm pretty good with domestic trips and packing, and I pretty much have everything all ready to go at any given moment in this one carry-on bag, and all I do is throw new clothes in there. But for international travel, it's like a bigger deal to me. For some reason, I think I need 45,000 things in the plane with me in the cabin. I have admittedly been a sucker to that sort of Sky Mall catalog that has all of those different interesting accoutrements in it, right? So, I have to talk myself out of, while I'm packing for an international trip, the thought that perhaps I need my own fan around my neck that provides a certain amount of antibacterial spray every 5 minutes the gimmick things. I'm just a sucker for those things. I have this like silk, I'm going to call it a sleeping bag that somebody told me I needed, and I purchased this thing, and now I'm like, I don't even know where it is, first of all. And second of all, why do I need that? I do have clothes. I have blankets. We're blessed with my husband's job that normally we fly internationally. We are not flying in coach. I really don't need a lot of stuff, but somehow I tell myself that I will need a lot of stuff. It was a different story, though, for me when I was in very early sobriety. In early sobriety, the way I cared for myself is by bringing everything that I needed to every single event. And so there's that whole concept, and I know that I've read this in Wayne Dyer too, but it's not coming to mind right now which book this was written in that he wrote. But the whole concept of what works in the morning doesn't work in the afternoon. What works in the afternoon is different from what works in the evening. And the whole idea behind that is, as we go through our seasons of life, we have different needs at different times, and that's okay. So when I was in early sobriety, I had a massive purse, and I carried Pellegrinos in it. I carried, in some cases, my own glass because I just really wanted to be sure that I was drinking out of a safe glass. I carried phone numbers with me already pre-programmed into my phone so I could call people. I had lists of prayers. There's a guy, sidebar, in our meetings who makes these little prayer cards. And so I used to carry those. And I had all the stuff that I might possibly need. I had chocolate, because when you first get sober, there's all your sugar cravings are way out of whack and usually skyrocketing because you're used to having so much more sugar in your system. So when you suddenly stop all of that sugar input, you know how it is. If you go on a diet, you feel that stressed out kind of like glucose drop, and just had that whole sense of where's the sugar? Where's the sugar? I need to fill this hole in my soul and in my body, right? And so that's something that I would recommend for sure if you're looking for a tip for the holidays, if you're spending your holidays sober, is carry your stuff with you. It won't always be this way, right? So self-care involves preemptively thinking about what beverages might be offered at the event and then kind of sidestepping around that and thinking it all the way through and bringing your own. I can't tell you how many times I've been to parties and galas where there is no other beverage besides alcohol, and maybe you're lucky to get a cup from the drinking fountain of water. Those are rare these days. I feel like they have a lot more options, but when I got sober, that was not the case. The other thing that I would put under this section of prepare and provide for yourself is to have a reason locked and loaded that you're not drinking. So if you're not comfortable talking about your sobriety with random strangers at parties or perhaps your colleagues, hello, totally understandable. What I found, though, is people like to ask. So if they see that you're not drinking and you have in the past been known to be a drinker at these functions. Sometimes it's really hard for people to wrap their brain around that, and they will notice and they will ask. Not every time, obviously, but I found that to be true for me. And so I got tired of stumbling over what I was going to say. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a party line locked and loaded, ready to go. And so you could say, I have an early meeting tomorrow. This is, of course, if you're not totally ready to say, I'm never drinking again, which really none of us should say. I shouldn't say it. People with 40 years of sobriety shouldn't say it. Or you could say, I'm at home with the kids by myself tonight. You don't owe anybody an explanation. Although it suddenly feels like you're back at your first day of high school again, like desperately scrambling to explain why your parents bought you a generic pair of Converse All-Stars. It's that sort of being put on the spot thing. And I found for me, the less I was caught off guard, the better I felt, the more empowered I felt to get through these situations sober. Number 2, wrapping gifts. So I already said, this is a classy problem. I have kids. I have gifts to wrap. There shouldn't be an issue here. I get that. But I also, at the same time, want to validate my experience, which is what I'm doing. And I'm here to tell you that I dislike strongly wrapping gifts for 8 kids. So here's the deal. I just basically feel like the holiday magic is completely zapped from me the moment I sit down in front of like a pile of stuff, Scotch tape, scissors, and wrapping paper. I'm about to invest about 65,000 hours of my time, and I'm not good at it, you guys. There are these people who are like wrapping ninjas, right? They use these amazing ribbons and they can make bows and they're incredible and they have wire. I can't. I can't even pick the right ribbon to go with the right paper combination. Like that doesn't even work for me. I'm not down. I mean, I think one of the best inventions ever was gift bags, right? I mean, who doesn't love a good gift bag? And then you recycle it. So if you're into that, yay for you. You are able to save the earth at the same time. So what's not to love? Anyway, so here's what I do. I'm going to get to the point. And the point is I hire that shit out. I just hire it out. So I will pay a teenager and, they are not going to automatically get carpal tunnel the second they look at a pile of gifts to wrap like I do. I suddenly get this like sudden onset, case of carpal tunnel syndrome. And like, they just don't have that anxiety about wrapping gifts. But what I do is I just say, hey, I'm going to pay you to wrap these gifts. And so, what I've done then is just slapped a Post-it note on every gift so that the person, who it's intended for receives it. Okay. So the teenager will wrap the gift, put a gift tag on it, and suddenly, boom, Bob's your uncle. I'm at peace. And I'll tell you, it's much better for me to be in that headspace and spend a little extra money than the alternative, which for me is sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth in the fetal position, because that's how much I dislike wrapping gifts for multitudes. Okay? So here's the other tip that I would give you if you happen to have a large family, and even if you don't, okay? I shop all year for Christmas. And that's simply to spread out the financial burden of it. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to say burden. And also so that I'm not totally overwhelmed in November, essentially shopping for 9 family members and also doing all the holiday extra things and Christmas cards and all of that, because I've just learned for me that's a recipe for disaster. So this is another way that during the holidays I can care for myself, and stay sober, is by wrapping gifts. All right. Number 3, additional stuff that you may have to subtract. Look, I'm not trying to diss Elf on the Shelf. I'm just saying some things are not for me, and Elf on the Shelf is one of them. If this does not apply to you, just skip it, tune it out. Elf on a Shelf is not for me. It is not my passion, but some people love it. If you love it, do it by all means, okay? If it brings you joy, yes, you go for it, live your best life. But for the rest of us who are scratching our heads, essentially wondering who on this planet decided it would be a good idea to add something huge to our already overwhelmed December calendars, this section is for you, because I just don't understand it. I don't understand why Santa Claus just wasn't cutting it, why Santa was not enough. For me, that seems like enough work. I never even made it to the part where you're leaving milk and cookies for Santa at night. Forget about it. Like, the whole thing is just, it's too much, right? It's too much for me. So to then add on top of that something called Elf on a Shelf, which within the past 10 years has become a thing, right? Where you purchase this elf and you are supposed to come up with an adventure or a scene, a vignette, if you will, that the elf will be doing every single day until Christmas. So like the evening of December 1st, actually, I think you're supposed to start the night before so that the elf is ready on December 1st. Through Christmas, the elf will be found in random places. Here's the idea of Elf on a Shelf, right? And the elf will be discovered in random places around your house, doing random things in a random vignette. Okay, this is the idea of the Elf on a Shelf. You know, one day you could have your elf rappelling off the side of Mount Fuji in Japan. You know, so maybe you've gone to the hobby store and you've purchased some, volcano type material, or, something, you're setting up a scene. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you remember doing dioramas in like the 4th grade with a shoebox? You had to make a scene, right? Of like George Washington crossing the Potomac, right? Okay, so I'm talking about essentially the same thing, but you incorporate this elf, okay? So that's just one day, the Mount Fuji thing, okay? That's one day. Then the next day, perhaps your elf is going to be caring for the unhoused. And so your scene is a soup kitchen and a maybe safe injection site, and your elf is going to be providing service in those areas. And then maybe the next day, the elf is caring for a group of baby monkeys that he finds when he zip lines into the jungle in Costa Rica. And then perhaps the next day, the elf is at the United Nations conference, and the elf is representing all of the December holidays, and We Are the World is playing in the background. So perhaps there's like a musical element incorporated to this scene. I mean, it's endless. It is endless, homies. That's what I'm trying to say. And it used to be a very simple thing when they first introduced Elf on the Shelf. Like your elf perhaps, well, this is seemingly simple to me now. Your elf was perhaps crocheting with a ball of yarn. But of course, as people do, they start getting really creative. And if this is your gifting, again, wonderful. But they start getting really creative. They up the ante every year, and we get these more complex scenes. Now, I know there are parties where you can get together and you can do these idea swaps. So you invite like 25 other parents, and all these parents are in charge of coming up with one elf scene, basically. And then they bring all the accoutrements to go with that scene. And then, boom, basically, you go home from that evening with your 25 scenes because everyone has contributed a scene with the stuff that you're going to need to make a aforementioned scene. Okay? But I'm just here to tell you, I'm not here for it. I'm just not. I'm not here for it. I can't. And I won't, because I know how much stress this kind of thing causes me. And I'm sorry. I know my kids at some point will be super disappointed, and I'll pay for their counseling because I cannot, you guys, add another thing. I just can't. And I've even gone so far as to purchase the elf on a shelf for each of my little kids and given it to them and had them create their own scene, which sounds so sad, but they love it. They love to do that. And so I'm like, you know what? Great. That's wonderful. You do you. Because I can't. I just can't. So I have to say, as I write this wrong of thinking that perhaps I could have been an elf on the shelf mom, I'm here to tell you what I actually am is a Snoop Dogg, Snoop on the Stoop mom. That's what I am. Snoop on the Stoop is something that looks elf on a shelf adjacent, but it's Snoop Dogg, and I don't think there's any plan. He just sits on the porch, basically, or wherever you want to put him. Maybe he's sitting on the fireplace mantle. He just sits there, and that's kind of like my speed. And so that's what I have. I have a Snoop on the stoop. Thank you, Snoop Dogg. Love you so much. Okay. Number 4, activities and events. Okay. So look, it's December and there are 25 billion things that you can do. So each city, of course, has its own holiday festivities. And generally, as I mentioned, I'm mostly a spontaneous person, but you can't really do that with a large family, I've found. There are some things you can do, but things that require tickets, for example, no. You know, the fallout is not worth it. It's just not pretty when it backfires. And I'm here to tell you that the times when I've said, oh, you know, it's a random Saturday in December, you know what we should do? We should head downtown and we should go to the Sheraton, for example. This is hypothetical, right? I haven't really done this, maybe. I've done this. But then I realize, you know, that the gingerbread houses at the Sheraton are, yes, a wonderfully festive, exciting tra-la-la idea. And everybody else in the entire Puget Sound area has had the same idea. And so there I am standing there. Of course, the toddler's having a meltdown. Everybody else's toddler's having a meltdown. Usually we're standing in the rain because there are so many people who have had the same brilliant idea that I had that were actually spilling out of the Sheraton and onto the streets of Seattle. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. It's not something that I enjoy. And really, I would have been better off making a frickin' plan. And so I'm going to give it to you straight with no chaser. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Drop mic. I'm really not a type A personality, except I kind of have to be now. I kind of have to be in some areas of my life. And this is one of them. I don't like it. I don't like pre-planning at all. But if I don't do it, I pay the price, just plain and simple. And hey, you know what? If you have a smaller family or if you don't mind crowds and you're willing to roll the dice and take the risks that come with gambling away your inner peace, or maybe it doesn't affect you like that, then that's great. I say do it. So I would just say, in general, pick holiday events that do not drive the holiday spirit right out of you and make you want to drink. Another example for me would be waiting 2 hours in line to see Santa. No, sir. So what I do in situations like that, which are walk-ups only, is I pick total off hours to do things. And you know what? Here's the deal. If that requires pulling them out of school early one day, so be it. I mean, this is kindergarten, people. They aren't defending a dissertation. It's not like they can't miss an afternoon of school, in my world anyway, and especially at the expense of your sanity. So if you absolutely cannot attend something that you would like to do off hours, here's my final part of this tip. Just pay the extra money for the enhanced experience, or whatever it is, the VIP line, basically whatever it is that is the equivalent of a Disneyland Fast Pass, or what used to be a Disneyland Fast Pass, because it is just not worth it otherwise for me, okay? When I have tired, cranky kids, if I wait in fat lines, then I'm going to add my own personal cranky tiredness, bitchiness. I'm going to be a mom on the brink of a nervous breakdown. And that's just not how I want to be remembered. And so if I can do something to prevent that, I will. All right. It's just not worth it to me. Number five of my tips is paper plates. All right. I'm very sorry, people who are big Save the Planet folks. I am really sorry. Look, I've come a long way because I used to use cans and cans of Aquanet hairspray. I personally am responsible for destroying the ozone layer, and I feel terribly about that. And right now, in this season of my life, which I talked about earlier in this podcast, that different things work for different seasons, I am in a paper plate season. I apologize, and I have also been told by my psychiatrist, thank you, that personal sacrifice is really not going to be what makes a dent in the planet. It's really not. And that makes me feel okay about this. So I just want to send a personal apology for this paper plate tip, but also please know that there will be a season where I will have the time, the energy, and the efforts to recycle. It will be within my bandwidth when possibly I don't have 10 plus people living in my home at all times. So here's a little story. My grandmother, God rest her soul, gave me a lovely set of autumn/harvest china plates before she died. So there were, I'm going to call them, they were Thanksgiving plates. So my mother must have said 10 times last Thanksgiving how much my grandmother would have appreciated knowing that I was using her plates, which I was. It was Thanksgiving Day, and I put out my grandmother's plates on a very nicely set table, and then I put a plastic disposable plate on top of my grandmother's plates. So essentially what I'm saying is my grandmother's plates served as chargers, okay? And then I had those disposable clear plates on top And so it kind of looked like it was adjacent to using the china. You know what I'm saying? And so I know, disposable plates on Thanksgiving, and it's not like anybody was fooled per se, but it still kind of looked like I was using her plates. Kind of, right? I know. Drop your jaw, clutch your pearls. But here's the deal, is I'm a happier person when there are minimal dishes in the sink. And, I just can't understand what the deal is with washing dishes nonstop on the holidays. I can't understand that. I never will. If you have to, I do understand it. But there are so many meals at the holidays. There's not even, we're talking zero chance of actually physically getting hungry again before someone busts out the leftovers from last night's meal efforts and you find yourself grazing around the kitchen island, like gnawing on a cold chunk of day-old honey-baked ham and maybe a Christmas cookie or 14. So at least for me, I guess I just wonder, what is the freaking point in making everybody crazy with this constant dishwashing, table setting, clearing, fine china, plates ordeal with this kind of pretentious silver polishing thing? Anybody else have to polish silver when they were a kid? I did. And I'm here to tell you, I think I would be driven to drink if I were in a constant cycle of spending the holidays washing dishes and setting tables. Oh, and making the meal. It's just not my bag. Again, if this brings you joy, do it. I'm totally here for that. For me, it's F that noise. So choose your sanity over save the earth is the bottom line. Sanity over saving the earth. Use paper plates. Number 6 is decorating. I remember one Christmas, little story here to get us started. My family went to Boston, where my aunt and uncle lived. We went there for several Christmases, actually, and then sometimes that side of the family came out to California with us. But, there's something about a Bostonian Christmas, actually an East Coast Christmas, right? Or any Christmas with snow. We'll call it a white Christmas. Okay? We were literally stringing popcorn by hand with a needle and sewing thread on Christmas Eve while my beloved cousin was playing a Christmas melody on her violin. I mean, this is like we were Amish, you guys. We were like posing for like a Norman Rockwell painting or something. And I remember just this feeling of like, this is friggin' Christmas, right? But fast forward to today, homie can't play that. I can't pull that off. If you can, and if your house constantly looks like the cover of Front Gate, props, like mad props to you. And I love that for you because I wish I was there. I wish I could do that. But my deal is I get resentful, and resentment is the number one offender, kills more alcoholics than anything, because if we don't deal with our resentments, then we essentially let them go in some way, shape, or form, even in our attitudes if we're not drinking of them. So I try my best to keep my resentments at a minimum, because I just never want to get to the point where I think that drinking sounds like a good solution. I don't want to drink over something as dumb as my house not looking like a Norman Rockwell painting, right? So I'm here to tell you that if you have kids, you know this. Kids love decorating for the holidays. There's just no getting around it. Trust me, I've tried. So I say, get their little cuteness to help you. So here's how I kind of thread the needle between, gosh, I just selfishly want my house to look like I want it to look, and maybe don't want to have, 100% elf on a shelf scenes everywhere and school projects hanging up. Some of that is wonderful. It's signs of life. We love it. But maybe I want it to look kind of nice. Maybe I'm having a party, whatever it is. I just kind of like my house to feel like an adult. It's the same concept as a minivan. I can talk a minivan up all day long, but I won't drive one. And that is simply because I can't. There are some things that I just need to not do in order to still feel like a human, although I have all of these kids. Does that make sense? I hope so. What I do when I have my kids help me decorate is I control what goes into the decorating bins. So we have bins in our garage storage that are Christmas decoration bins, if you will. And at times I've had to monitor what goes in and out of there because random things have ended up in there that I'm like, where on earth did this come from? What is this? I don't know. Andy Williams vinyl record doing in here? And why is somebody trying to thumbtack it to the wall? But this stuff happens. So what I do is I try and approve of the things that go into the bins. And that way I'm contributing to at least the vision of how I would like my house to look. So then I look like fun Disneyland mom when I pull the bins out and I go, yeah, you can help me decorate for Christmas. Go for it. Pull this stuff out. Put it wherever you want it, right? And some of the things they can't do by themselves, so they're like non-starters. Like, you can't really do our big old tall tree, the top third of it out. You can't really do the garland stuff that's, got the lights on it, has this elaborate kind of electrical scheme going, no, out. But anything in the bins, yeah, go for it. Gently put that wherever you want to put it. And you know what? Sweet. Like, go for it. Because the alternative is if I said to my kids, let's go to Target and buy Christmas decorations, we'd come home with like dog poop with googly eyes on it. We'd come home with that big mouth Billy Bass white elephant gift singing fish plaque thing. Do you remember that from like 15 years ago, 20 years ago? I don't know, a long time ago. It's really sad when you start to get old and like the decades start blending together. You don't want to come home with, or at least I don't, some kind of a bobblehead doll, right? That is in a Santa suit, but it's not Santa. It's really like a llama, and the llama is singing Marshmallow World. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. So this is my big tip for this one is you control what goes into the decorating bins and they get to decorate. All right? Win-win. Everyone's happy, reveling around the house with the Christmas spirit, exuberant, like we're all auditioning together for the Lawrence Welk and the Champagne Singers Christmas special. Done and done. Did you guys used to watch that, Lawrence Welk? Yeah, my grandma loved it. All right, last tip. Remind yourself of why you are alcohol free. So this is a big one. I have my sponsees do this even when we're just at the very beginning of working together is, I don't care, put the list on your phone, on a Post-it note, whatever works for you, where you're going to see it and run into it. Write out a list of why you're alcohol free. This could be your list of consequences that you may have obtained while drinking. This could be for your health. This could be because you want to be the best version of yourself. This could be because you want to be able to show up and be present. Whatever it is, write yourself a little list to remind yourself why you're alcohol free. Look, Jesus, Joseph, and Mary all agree that me not drinking is just about the best idea ever. And if you are anything like me, then it's probably the same for you. And I just don't want to have to use any extra brain power, any extra energy trying to pull down from the cloud the reasons that I don't drink if I need them. And I needed those a lot when I was first sober. I needed those reasons handy. Just because, you go to all this stuff, all these events, and people are whooping it up, right? And so it's another way to care for myself. All right, I am wishing you and yours sane and silent nights. Well, I'll say silent-ish nights. And I just want to remind you that if you think it through and you plan for it, you can handle the holidays like a boss and just prioritize the things that you really would like to see accomplished in your actions and attitudes during Christmas and how to get there. You got this. For your bailout bag, remember, keep your finger on the pulse. What works in the morning may not work for the afternoon, and it may not work for the evening. You may have to switch your plans up a few times. That's okay. Find what works for you and do it. Remember to be kind, rewind, and I thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. Keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.